I love cooking and I love teaching people how to cook. I've been doing both for 30 years. To cook well, it helps if you love and value food, as that's where it all starts. My approach to cooking is simple and not new. Use the best ingredients you can get organized, and follow the recipe. And that way, you'll be sure to get really wonderful results.
Isn't it wonderful we can now buy home-produced Irish mozzarella made from the milk of happy buffaloes which are grazing in West Cork? The flavour of Irish mozzarella differs from a classic Italian one, as you would imagine. That is due to the lush green grass they feed on in this country. I'm going to combine it with another seemingly exotic ingredient, physalis or Cape gooseberry, which in fact grows really well in this country during the summer. 20 years ago, the idea we could produce ingredients like this would have been unimaginable. Just goes to show how far the food culture of Ireland has changed.
So I'll begin by preparing the physalis, or the Cape gooseberries, which are these gorgeous little things. They're sort of so exotic looking, and it's amazing you can grow them in this country in a sunny spot, glasshouse in a tunnel. And it's like a little berry which is trapped inside a little paper cage like that. Simple as that to prepare them. What's delicious sometimes if you twist that back, and you can dip them in caramel or white chocolate or dark chocolate and let them cool, and they make a lovely dessert. But for today, it's a savoury dish, so you literally just pull the little papery cage off the physalis, and then we'll chop them. Some of them I'm going to just half, literally just cut in half like that, and then some of them I'm just going to cut into slightly smaller pieces, so you get a little bit more of the flavour. But it's nice to see the original shape and the look of them, like that. Pop those there. So as you can see, they're super easy to prepare, as is the entire dressing that we're making. So the rest of my ingredients, I've got some red chili, finely diced. It can be really hot if you like, or it can be slightly milder. And I've got some green chili for that lovely sort of fresh, grassy chili flavour. I've got a little finely grated ginger. Add in our more finely chopped physalis, and then the ones that we have just halved. So that's our sort of dry ingredients, if you like, or our solid ingredients. Our liquid ingredients are some mirin and some sake, a tablespoon of each. So they're both types of rice wine. The mirin is slightly lower in alcohol and higher in sugar. So if you can only get the sake, that would be absolutely fine. Or you can use a little dry sherry here. It makes a good alternative. Then 1 teaspoon of honey for a little bit of sweetness. This is local honey. And then 4 tablespoons of olive oil, just to give a delicious sort of liquid addition. Extra virgin olive oil. I'm using a little sea salt. You could use a finer salt if you wanted. Twist of pepper. Now give that a mix. Make sure to mix all of the liquid ingredients, well, all of the ingredients really, but particularly the liquid ingredients really well. This dressing will keep for a couple of days in your fridge. It's better, like most things are, on the day it's made. The physalis or the Cape gooseberries would soften slightly. Not really the end of the world. Now a little taste, see how we're doing. So I'm tasting to see how much chili heat is here, if the honey and olive oil and the rice wines are nicely balanced. It's good. I'm going to put a tiny pinch more salt in. It's a slightly exotic flavour. It's really good, actually. That's that dressing. So simple. Couldn't be easier. Now, assembling the salad then, also a thing of ease. I'm going to do a sort of a family size serving. I've got some mint and coriander, and I've got a little rocket and mustard greens, just for sort of, not just for decoration, but they'll add a little lightness and also a little bit of heat in both of these leaves to the Irish salad. So not too many of them, because it's all about the mozzarella here and the dressing. I love this sort of feathery little red mustard leaf. Very hot. Delicious also with a steak, actually. Okay, that should do it. Now, the mozzarella, you can tear apart with your hands, or you can cut it. I'm going to cut it today, and you do it exactly what way you would like it. So this is the mozzarella. It's beautifully soft. Slice it. So fantastic to be able to get Irish buffalo mozzarella, almost creamy looking it is inside. You can arrange the mozzarella in overlapping slices or randomly, whatever suits your style. I think I will overlap the mozzarella for this. The small little mozzarella balls called bocconcini are also lovely. You can do individual ones or just tear them in half. and that would be lovely. Now, I also need some mint leaves and coriander leaves, and they pair very good with everything that's in the dressing. You could chop some mint into the dressing if you want to, but I'm just actually going to tear like that, so the mint adds freshness, slight sort of sweetness, a coolness, just lovely. Coriander, pinched off like that. I don't want to hide the mozzarella that we're trying to celebrate, so I'll put my bits and pieces on with a degree of attention. That particular whiteness that mozzarella has, that you'll see it in the finished dish. And now the dressing. Give it a good stir to mix up all the ingredients, just in case they've sort of slightly separated if you've made the dressing ahead of time. Believe it or not, this dressing is actually delicious with things like grilled mackerel or even a grilled salmon. If you could get a nice, lovely wild salmon, would be wonderful. It's very colourful, looks like a festival on a plate. Almost sort of Mexican in colour. You know, there are so many different varieties of this type of little Cape gooseberry, which are grown in Mexico, but they grow all over the world. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to put all of the dressing on. I'll pass the rest of that separately for people who'd like a little bit more. Really fresh tasting, maybe a little crusty bread to go with that. Perfect starter, perfect lunchtime meal, really nice and great Irish ingredients.
Roast chicken is many people's desert island dish. Crisp and golden skin, juicy and tender flesh, and all the bits to go with it to complete the picture, such as gravy, roast potatoes, maybe a bread stuffing, and so on. The quality of the chicken will become immediately obvious in this dish, so try and get a free-range bird, and if you wish, an organic one. Bread sauce has as many sworn enemies as ardent fans, and this is my attempt to convince a few more of its detractors the sauce is worth a chance. A simple sauce of red currants, which is delicious served with most poultry, is a sweet and sharp finishing touch.
So I'm going to get the chicken into the oven. So a few little flavour additions at this stage before we start. I have a whole lemon, and chicken, thyme leaves, lemon, butter or olive oil all go brilliantly together. So I just pierce the lemon a few times, and that goes into the cavity. And we're also going to pop in a sprig of thyme. This chicken's going to take approximately an hour and a half. So you can imagine the way the steam coming out of the lemon and the thyme combined with the lemon just makes a fabulous combination. So I'm using a little butter. The butter's at room temperature. We want the butter for flavour. So just a little kind of moisturising of the flesh like that. A pinch of salt. A little crunchy Malden sea salt is what I like, or a lovely Irish sea salt. And some black pepper. So, beautifully seasoned, lots of flavourings. This is just going to be really, really nice. So into my preheated oven to roast for approximately an hour and a half. Now, the controversial bread sauce is the next thing. So I've got some breadcrumbs, which I have removed the crusts from before grinding them into the crumbs, and then an onion studded with 2 cloves. So the breadcrumbs straight into a saucepan, the onion, which is going to add flavour, and sort of snuggle that down into the breadcrumbs. Then we have some milk, heat on under the pot, hence the slight sizzle. A little bit of butter, you can leave out if you wanted, but it makes it so delicious when you pop that in. And here again, another sprig of thyme. And you don't need to pull the leaves off the thyme because they'll actually fall off the stalks in the cooking. So a twist of pepper, then on a low heat, and I'm going to bring this up to a simmer and cook it very gently for about 30 minutes. Saucepan on, heat on underneath it, and remember, cook it on a nice gentle heat because you have the ingredients in here to make things stick. You've got milk and breadcrumbs in the same saucepan together, so a very, very gentle heat, the odd stir, and it'll work perfectly. Now for the other really simple sauce, I'm going to make redcurrant sauce, which is delicious with chicken. Very, very simple. I've got some red currants, and I always freeze red currants during the summer when they're at their best. And then I use them throughout the winter when they're out of season from frozen, and they work really, really brilliantly. They're a wonderful, tart, bitter, fully flavoured berry. Really fantastic. So this could not be easier. Pop those in there with a little water and a little sugar. And I'm going to bring this up to a simmer, and it makes sort of quite a thin sauce. You can make it slightly sharper if you want and put in less sugar, but you don't want to make it so sharp that when people are eating it, that they wince, because that's no good. So that's just going to go on a very, very low heat and up to a simmer, cook it for 5-8 minutes, that sort of thing. We'll keep an eye on it. And now I'm going to make the gratin of chard. And I'm going to begin by just toasting a little breadcrumb in olive oil. This is part of the little crunchy topping that's going to be on the top of the gratin. So I've got some lovely sourdough bread, slightly coarse breadcrumbs, because I want a little bit of crunch here in the end result. And then a little extra virgin olive oil. So just drizzle on the olive oil, and then I'm going to run the olive oil or turn the olive oil through the crumbs. And they'll just sort of coat it, and then into the oven. I'm not adding any extra salt in here, because the bread will already have been seasoned. Just pop those in. And while they're toasting, I can go ahead and make the actual chard gratin itself. Sometimes called Swiss chard. It looks like really, really healthy spinach. And what I've got in here is what's called rainbow chard, because it has the white Swiss chard, it's got beautiful ruby chard, and it also has lovely golden chard. And the combination of the three are sometimes called rainbow chard, or bright lights is one of the names of the varieties. So, because the stalk is tougher than the leaf, you need to cook them separately. So begin by just pulling off the leaves off the stalk. Like that. This is the way normally you'd begin to cook spinach as well. We cook the stalks of the spinach as well, because they're really delicious and there's no point wasting them. See, the leaf just comes away nice and easily, like that. And I've got a saucepan of water here coming up to the boil, and I'm going to season it pretty well. Good pinch of salt like that. I like to cut the stalks, in the case of chard, into 5-centimetre sized pieces. Sometimes I cut the chard at a sort of an intense angle. So, I have my full quantity of chard stalks here, and we're going to cook the stalks first. So, salted water, boiling, and because essentially you could call this a green vegetable, even though it's multicoloured, no lid on the pan. They'll take about 6 minutes to cook, and while they are cooking, I can start to make the sauce. A little bit of butter, which I'm going to melt, and an equal quantity of flour. Essentially, I'm making a type of bechamel sauce. So pop that in. I've measured those nice and carefully to make sure they're evenly weighted. That's essentially a roux. So add in my milk and my cream, just for a little bit of richness. And then I'm going to whisk this fairly fastidiously while it's coming up to a simmer, because I want to make sure that I've got no lumps in there. So now I can add in my quicker cooking leaf part of the chard. It looks like at this stage as if this will never fit into the saucepan, but actually, once it starts to wilt down, it will all fit in there. Now, back to our sauce. Sauce is cooked. It looks quite thick, possibly even too thick to the eye at this stage. But when you put in the chard, there'll be a little of the liquid that's been cooked in hanging onto the chard leaf, so that has a lovely sort of silkening effect. Now, my chard is cooked. You need to drain it well. Now, the leaves have a beautiful silky consistency. They're still really beautifully green, as you can see. Now, mix the pressed chard into the sauce. Then, the Gruyere. Sort of 3/4 of the Gruyere going in there. And the lovely marjoram, if you have it, which is just such a lovely thing. Then give that a good stir. Fold the sauce through the vegetable and the Gruyere. So that's really, really good. I'm happy with that. Into our serving dish, something that's oven-proof, something that you like the look of, and that's perfect consistency. See those little strings on the edge of the saucepan? That's the melted cheese of the Gruyere. That's why I didn't put the cheese into the sauce. I put it into the mixture, and then you get those lovely strings, which is part of the fun of eating it. I'm going to put my toasted crumbs or my pan grattata on top, and these are looking good. Yeah, toasted up nicely. I'm just going to give them a little stir. So they've absorbed the oil, so I'm going to just sprinkle some of these over the top, and it gives an extra little dimension. Okay, and then finally, remaining Gruyere cheese. And this can go into the oven straight away to reheat it until it's really bubbly and lovely, or you could make that early on in the day, put it to one side, back into the oven half an hour before you're going to eat. This would be really great with the roast chicken. Okay, chicken should be cooked by now. Let's have a look. It certainly looks lovely. Gorgeous golden colour and lots of lovely juices in the bottom of the pan for making our gravy. I think it goes without saying that when you're cooking chicken, you must make sure it's cooked through. Take something like a little skewer and stick it into the part of the chicken which takes longest to cook. and that is between the drumstick and breast of the chicken, just right down in there. So pop it in, like that, and count 2, 3, 4, 5. Take it out, and immediately test it red hot. So I know the heat has penetrated right the way through to the part of the chicken that takes longest to cook, so it's cooked through. If you carve it, the minute it's cooked, all of the juice runs straight out. If you leave it to rest, the juice is redistributed and you get a juicier bird and the flesh is much more delicious. So I'm going to turn the oven temperature down to about 50 degrees, like that, and then put that into rest. Great. Now I'm going to make my gravy. So making gravy is very simple and straightforward. Add in some nice chicken stock to those juices, like that. So a pinch of salt and a little pepper. You could add herbs in here at this stage. If you like wine in your gravy, put it in before you put in the stock, okay? And boil it until it reduces by at least half. Otherwise it will taste winey. Scraping it like that. And I can leave that on the heat. I want it to come up to a simmer and a bubble. The redcurrant sauce I have just had reheating nice and gently, so I can just decant that into my bowl ready for serving with the chicken in a couple of moments. It's nice and light. That's a good foil for the bread sauce. And the bread sauce I've also brought back up to a simmer because we're adding the final little addition of cream, like that, which, as I said earlier on, is optional, but it just gives a little bit of sort of luxe to the bread sauce. Okay, that's perfect. Lovely sort of creamy consistency. It should be served steaming hot like that. Some people like cold bread sauce. That's not a particular journey I want to go on. Meanwhile, our gravy has been simmering away. So a little sieve just takes any little bits of things that have fallen off the chicken out of the equation and gets it sort of slightly more refined. So into my sauce boat. That's our third sauce. As you could say, it's roast chicken with 3 sauces, really. Our lovely chicken that's had a little relax and will be all the better for the relaxing, certainly from our point of view at this stage. If any little juices have come out of the chicken, add those into your gravy. That's just the very, very best of it. The really good chicken deserves a bit of decoration, so I'm going to use some lovely green glossy bay leaves. Slightly over the top, I know, but it makes it look sort of festive. The only remaining thing to finish this dish is our gratin. The lovely bubbly gratin, rich but not overly rich. Delicious, succulent chicken meat, both brown from the leg and white from the breast, gravy, and then the bread sauce, unctuous and lovely, and the lighter, refreshing, slightly piquant redcurrant sauce. Lovely, simple food, very good ingredients. You can do a lot of the preparation ahead of time, so hopefully it won't be too stressful for you, and the eating of it should be just fantastic. This chocolate and hazelnut cake is definitely the sort of cake you would serve at a dinner party, as it is rich, but also surprisingly light, because there's no flour in it. Egg yolks and egg whites, whisked separately, provide the cake's structure, and to achieve the authentic flavour and texture of something bought at a wonderful French patisserie, I use unsalted butter. What is, of course, vital is that you use good quality chocolate, and my preference here is for chocolate with 62% cocoa solids. Any less than this, and it will be very sweet, and any more can make the cake almost too intense. I have the chocolate and the butter melting for the chocolate and hazelnut cake, and I've allowed it to cool slightly before I go to the next stage. In here, I have whisked up my egg yolks and my caster sugar to a lovely, creamy, foamy mousse. A rich, creamy, foamy mousse. I have my hazelnuts ready as well. These are hazelnuts that I roasted to remove the skins and also to lift the flavour and the texture. And then I chopped them finely in a food processor. So you can see it's like sort of grit rather than sand. And the final element for putting the cake together are some egg whites, which I have sort of 3/4 beaten. So I'm going to mix my chocolate into the egg yolks, beautifully melted. The addition of a little bit of butter, obviously for richness, and that's what makes it super shiny actually and glossy like that. Then adding in our hazelnuts. You could replace the hazelnuts in this recipe with almonds if you wanted to. And then my egg whites. So I'm just going to whisk my egg whites a little bit more. I don't want too stiff a peak. We're really making a sort of a chocolate souffle here. You can use an electric mixer, of course, to do this, but I'm so used to doing it by hand, I find it as easy as anything else. Just like that, just starting to hold a peak. Perfect. I'm going to fold the chocolate and the hazelnut and the egg yolk mousse together before I put in the egg white. The egg white is what's going to lighten the cake. So I'm using just a rubber spatula. So go right down to the bottom, and you notice the dark molten chocolate coming up. And that's pretty much there. It's a single colour. And now I'm going to add in my egg whites. So a little egg white to begin with, maybe about a quarter of the mixture, which I stir in. I'm not too particularly careful. What it's doing, the first portion, is it's softening the mixture and preparing it for the larger volume of egg white. Then I will be a bit more careful. That doesn't have to look as if it's completely mixed through. And then the rest of the egg white. That mixture of egg white is made up mostly of air, just air that's trapped in the egg. So then, slightly more carefully folding. So cut through, give the bowl a 90-degree turn, cut through, and I usually cut 4 times, going right down to the bottom of the bowl, and then on the 4th turn, I give the bowl a 360-degree scrape with the spatula. But we are trying to blend the two mixtures together with the lightest possible hand. Right, that's perfect. You get a foamy, frothy, soft cake mixture like that. My oven is on heating and my tin is prepared. So I'm using a spring-form tin, which I've lightly greased with a little butter. I've put a little disc of parchment paper in the bottom, taking every insurance to make sure that the cake won't stick on us later. Then, pour the chocolate mixture into your tin. My oven is preheated to 190 degrees, and we cook it at that temperature for 20 minutes. And then we turn the temperature down to 160 and cook it for the remaining length of time. Great, that's the cake in cooking. While the cake is cooking, you can make the icing. So I've melted a little more chocolate with a little bit of coffee in here, and I have some cold butter here. But when I say cold, not fridge cold, it's at room temperature really, but the colder side of room temperature. Add the butter in a few little bits at a time. We want the first 2 or 3 bits of butter to blend in before the next goes in, and we get a lovely sort of buttery icing. Okay, perfect. Very happy with that. And I have a cake that I made earlier. When it comes out of the oven, we put a damp tea towel on top. And this is what it looks like at this stage. You can see it's slightly collapsed. Run something like a palette knife, perhaps, if you have one, or just an ordinary table knife, actually, around the edge of the tin to make sure it's not caught anywhere. It doesn't seem to be. And then decide what particular serving dish you're going to use. I'm going to use this nice glass serving dish. Loosen the spring form like that before I do anything else. Take your place. Make sure your hands are nice and clean. Pop it and find in the right spacing for it. And then without thinking about it too much, but not with too much speed, just go 1, 2, 3 and flip it over like that, keeping it nice and firmly gripped. And then that should be fine. Then carefully, just give it a little bit of a help. Some palette knife just into one side. And don't forget your layer of parchment paper, which you put into the tin to start off with, because clearly it would be a fiasco if you iced all over that. This is the joy of parchment paper. It doesn't stick. And then to ice the cake, put most, if not all, of the icing on in one go. Because I know exactly what I'm dealing with then. And then it's just going to be a very, very simple little swirl. So sort of paddling the icing out to the edges, and then encouraging it to run down the edge, help it to fill in the gaps. Sometimes in summer, if there are lots of lovely scented roses, I'll sprinkle some rose petals, clearly edible rose petals, over the cake when I'm serving it. Okay, so just flicking up the side of the cake there like that. Clean around the edge. I'm using just a little bit of kitchen towel. Okay, that's that. All it needs, nice bowl of whipped cream,